is a busy day. But before we get started, make sure that you let me know in the comments where you're checking in from and what's going on. Make sure you click the like, subscribe, follow buttons on whichever platform you're watching this on. But I wanted to talk to you about being overwhelmed because I know that this is the season for a lot of people to be overwhelmed, especially now that for the parents, kids are getting out of school, so that means that there's more stuff to do. And if you're doing a network business, whether you're doing it full time or part time, or you're trying to figure out your schedule in life, it can be a lot, And if you've been feeling like that and drowning in your to do list, which I have several for some reason, or second guessing if you've been built for network marketing, I want you to understand just breathe in and out. Because, guys, I want you to understand you're not alone. Everybody gets overwhelmed at some point in this business, whether they're just starting out or been here for decades. They can get overwhelmed. But I want you to understand that being overwhelmed doesn't mean that you have to get stuck. You just have to keep moving. And what I want to talk about is how I move through when I start to feel overwhelmed in life and I don't allow myself to get stuck in the stand, like Arturo from that movie. My Gen Xers know what I'm talking about. So look, the very first time I felt overwhelmed in this business was decades ago when I first got started. And it was like, oh, wait, people really want me to book something. Like, wait, where do I go? And of course, at the time, the agency I went was not as good as the one I'm with now back then. Because back then, being a home-based agent was still not a real big popular thing. So I didn't have all the same things that I have now, but it was just a lot to try to figure this all out. I didn't have the mentorship. So I had to do a lot of learning on myself. I mean, by myself is what I'm trying to say, by myself. So when I was doing all of this, I also had to deal with booking trips. I was in college at the time. I was in a sorority and held a position on the executive board on top of, having to do externships and working and military. It was a lot. There was a lot going on. And as time went on and I learned how to deal with being overwhelmed, and over the years I've gotten better at it. But one of the things that I realized was that I was a lazy entrepreneur. And that really was a running joke for me for a long time, that I was a lazy entrepreneur. But what I really was, I was overwhelmed, unstructured, and honestly trying to do too much too fast. Now, what I want you to understand, being a lazy entrepreneur doesn't mean that you're not doing anything. I learned to take that term of being a lazy entrepreneur and I learned how to flip it to be more structured and different things like that. That I have a book that I'm writing slowly, finally, that is about being overwhelmed, about having structure, about having schedules, and being a lazy entrepreneur and how to flip that and make it something good. Because I know I'm not the only one who has felt stuck between ambition and exhaustion, right? Now understand, it is okay to feel overwhelmed, especially when you're building something from scratch. Or even if you have help and you got a foundation going, it is okay. Do not beat yourself up because you're feeling overwhelmed. You're not a failure or anything else. Now, what I want you to understand is that it matters what you do after that feeling shows up. A lot of people get overwhelmed and they sit in overwhelm idle. And then they stew about it, and then they complain about it, but then they're stuck being overwhelmed, and then they never get anything done, right? Now, I want you to understand something, and this is what I truly believe, that being overwhelmed, struggling to say a word, is a teacher. Sometimes it's telling you that you're moving too fast, which has happened to me a lot. Other times it's letting you know that you're not clearing your next step, which happens to me a lot because I'm moving too fast. And sometimes it's just like, look, take a breath, stop trying to be Superwoman or Superman on a Tuesday. Sometimes we, especially Black women and minority women, women, we take on way too much and think that we can't tell people no, right? So one of the things you got to think about is, these are techniques that I've learned throughout my life, through learning about myself, therapy and everything, is what exactly is making me feel overwhelmed? And you know why you have to ask that? Because if you don't find the root reason of why you are feeling overwhelmed, the problem is you're going to stay overwhelmed. Now, are you overcomplicating things in your head? Now, I know there's a lot of people I help and coach that they overcomplicate. I can say write one sentence about something and I'll get four. And I'm like, why do you need four? Well, I think you need it. No, I didn't ask all that. Don't overcomplicate things. Keep it simple, stupid. You know how that saying goes? Kiss. Now, here's one thing that some people know how to do, but a lot don't. Is now the right time to add this to my plate? And the reason why I have that in there is because sometimes, especially in network marketing, you'll see other people who you feel that you're trying to keep up with, or you feel you should be at their level. So you start putting things on your plate that you're not even ready to eat. You know what I mean? Like you'll look at someone who may have been in the business and has 5 more years of experience and success than you, and you want to be like them. So you're trying to do what they're doing at level here, but you're still here. You know, sometimes you gotta wait. Don't put everything on your plate until you're actually ready to eat. But a big thing that I had to learn was setting boundaries, sacrifice, and aligning myself properly. Now I have to learn how to say no to people and opportunities that actually drain you. Now I've been scolded a few times because I would spend a lot of time helping other people within my organization and outside the organization doing the training because you know I'm the first trainer. But they was like, look, you can't keep helping everybody else if you don't help yourself first. So I had to learn to say no to certain things. Maybe it's not a no right now to the opportunity. I mean, a no to the opportunity, but maybe not a right now. I've had to learn how to delegate where people can go to get the same information instead of me sitting down and doing it, or me taking on things that I just really don't want to do. Right? And then redefine what a sacrifice is. It's not giving up what matters, but letting go of what doesn't serve your vision. A lot of times when people hear sacrifice, they look at it as a negative tone. And I really don't, because I feel, this is just my opinion, I don't know about you guys, I feel that what you sacrifice now, you can get back later. That's the thing that how I look at it. So when people say, "Oh, I sacrifice TV," which I really don't because it doesn't bother me, but but they'll sacrifice TV. But then when they get to a certain level, a certain accomplishment, they may go ahead and reward themselves with watching a movie. You know, people do this all the time in the business where they'll say, "I'm not going to drink coffee," or "I'm not going to travel anywhere until I do this." You know what I mean? That's what they do. And sacrifice doesn't necessarily mean something bad. I don't want you to think that because you sacrifice something, you know, it's like, woe is me. Oh my God, I gave up. No, I'm just not going to do it right now. Then the myth of balance versus prioritizing with intention. Now, a lot of people always say, well, how do you balance? And I say, I don't. I'm a seesaw with 8 different legs on it. I said, some are up, some are down, some are just spinning. You know, it's not about trying to balance life, but putting things in perspective. You know, figuring out what's more important based off your goals. I'm gonna tell you right now, though, if you don't have your goal set lined up with steps, you're gonna always feel overwhelmed because you're gonna be jumping from first base to third base to second base to off the field because you're gonna be so confused. But just prioritize what it is that you want to do with intention. Meaning that don't just say that I'm going to work my business first thing in the morning just to say it. I personally hate when my team or anybody else tells me things that they're going to do because they think that that's what I want to hear. I don't want you to tell me what you think I want to hear. I want you to tell me what you actually going to do, right? Because I want you to understand this business is not about doing everything, which a lot of people think it is. It's about doing the right things at the right time. And sometimes that means having to choose discomfort now for freedom later. Look, Netflix can wait for some of y'all. That vision can't. Just replace Netflix with something else. You know, sometimes for me, it's sleep. Sleep sometimes just ain't on my menu for the day, but I'm going to catch up later on Sunday. But there's things that I will sacrifice. Like, for instance, my trick to make sure that I go live when I get home from work, I'm not allowed to eat. Now, those that know me know I love my food. So I'm not allowed to eat anything until I do my live. And I've actually walked around here for an hour and a half, like, damn, I'm hungry. Nope, 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 gotta do your live. I won't eat, I'll drink though. I will hydrate, right? Now understand, we're gonna talk about some of the strategies that I use to manage when I get overwhelmed, right? One of the things that I do, again, first figure out, why am I overwhelmed? Am I really overwhelmed? Sometimes you're feeling overwhelmed is really just because you're tired. It's not that you're overwhelmed, you're just tired. So a lot of times I pause on what I call a brain dump on things in my head. And I've been saying that for like a long, long time for a lot of different things. I have to brain dump things out of my head so I can get it out, so I can organize what it is I'm trying to do. If I leave it in my head too long, it just gets all over the place. You know, I got to organize that filing cabinet. Then you got to write down and circle the top 3 priorities that you need to take care of right now. Forget the rest. Because if you try to make everything a priority, that's going to be a problem. So right now, you got to circle the top 3 things you need to do. And then when you're circling them, I tend to put due dates behind it. So I know when they're due, expectations for myself. And then go through your list. What is actually urgent and what is noise? There is a total difference between what needs to be done now, and that's just like filler. You know what I mean? We don't do fillers right here. And stop saying no and feeling guilty. Don't have no guilt when you say no. Let them know, look, I'm building something big right now. Unfortunately, I can't go out to the movies. I can't go to dinner. I can't go to the club. I can't do this. It is okay. And if your friends and your people don't understand, that is okay too. But my favorite thing, rest. Sunday tends to be my big rest day. When I have my Fridays off, I might use some of that day too as well if I don't have a lot of errands and doctor's appointment. But rest is part of the strategy, not a reward. Do not reward yourself with resting. That's not how this works, right? Now look, if you are feeling overwhelmed, I want you to remember this. You're not behind, you're building. You're not lazy, you're learning. And even if it feels messy, you're still moving forward because there's a lot of people who get stuck with being overwhelmed and they're not moving at all. They're stuck. But you're not stuck. Just keep moving. Like Dora says, keep on swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. That's basically what it is. Now, look, what I asked you to do is I've asked you to like, I've asked you to comment below, and I've asked you to share. But I also want you to drop a yes if this really hit you. This was a truth bomb for you. And then I want you to tell me one thing you're releasing this week to protect your peace. Now, I want you to understand all of this unfiltered. A little bit organized beforehand, because but this is a real life journey. And it's exactly what I'm writing about in my book. And you know what? I can't wait to share it with you whenever I finish it. But other than that, this is me signing off because guess what? I'm hungry.